Thank you for coming. My name is Adam Riches, and I'm the director of Robust Games. 2 weeks ago, we launched our game, Loco Motive, and so we're doing a very, very fresh post-mortem. So, how does this?
Like this.
Oh, just like this? Okay. Okay, so this is me. I have been working in games since 2014. I started my professional career at Chucklefish. A few years ago, I co-founded Robust Games with my brother, Joseph Riches, and I am the guy on stage doing my first ever talk. So apologies if this is a little rough. I haven't done this before. So these are the games that I have worked on over the years. So Starbound is sort of like a sci-fi survival game that launched in 2016. And then Wargroove, it's a sort of spiritual successor to the Advanced War series with a sort of fantasy twist. Kingdom Two Crowns is a sequel to the well-known Kingdom series published by Raw Fury. And Witchbrick, which is Chucklefish's current game that they're still actively working on. So this is the game I'm going to be talking about today, Loco Motive. It is a point-and-click adventure inspired by the 90s LucasArts classics that people really seem to enjoy, sort of like the Monkey Island series, the Day of the Tentacle series. It's definitely in the vein of sort of the more comedic adventure games. It's a comedy murder mystery, and it's set aboard a 1930 steam train called the Royce Express. When I was pitching it or explaining it to people in a sort of one quick sentence, it would be Monkey Island meets Agatha Christie, sort of a parody on the Murder on the Orient Express. And if you're not sure, if you haven't seen the game before, there's a trailer here for the game.
It's my desire that the Underworld estate be passed over in its entirety to...
It may just be a flesh wound. We've been accused of murdering Lady Unterwald.
We've got our eyes on you, mister. Both pairs of them.
A sweet old lady, tragically cut down in her prime. We just want to know the truth.
We need to stop this train!
Was it money? Vengeance? A burning hatred for the elderly?
There is a killer among us, but I assure you they've made a great mistake.
So yeah, that's Loco Motive. We shipped it on a PC and Nintendo Switch.
It's my desire that...
You don't want to watch it again. It's fine. So this is the studio I founded with my brother. We're an indie micro studio based in London, although my brother has since moved to Lisbon, Portugal, so now we're a fully remote studio. Together we bring nearly 10 years of industry experience with a history of working on successful, critically acclaimed games. This is me as the creative director, and this is my brother, Joseph, as the technical director. We sort of fill in each other's skill gaps because I'm more on the art background. I have a history of working in pixel art and animation, and Joseph is more on the sort of coding, technical side. So he did a lot of the hard work, getting the game to actually work in Unity. On top of Unity, we used a tool specifically designed to help us make this genre of game, PowerQuest. It's sort of a wrapper on top of Unity made by another developer called Dave Lloyd. So Dave works at Powerhoof, and he's actually making his own adventure game called The Drifter. And he's sort of developing this tool, as is making it, but it's totally free to use. He updates it regularly, and it really helps smooth things along because it has everything that you would need to make one of these games. So these are the games that he made with the tool for game jams, essentially. So these were 2-week, maybe even shorter game jams that he made with PowerQuest. And that's what actually really got my attention with the tool, and what drove me to think, oh, okay, well, maybe we can use this to make this kind of game. So yeah, it basically has everything you would need, kind of right out of the box, including stuff like rhubarb lip sync. So if you were to put voice acting in the game, it's as simple as putting the voice files in, and it reads them, and then it essentially does perfect lip sync, which really helps actually with selling the polish. Also great stuff for localization, exports as a CSV. So we actually launched with English and German on day one. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of how we got into the position we were in. So this is a game I started exploring making with PowerQuest, sort of on my own, before I wrote my brother into it. This was going to be a sci-fi short, essentially, where you crash land on what's essentially going to be a sort of a gas station, and then you have to solve a few puzzles to escape it. But I went really crazy with the art here, and I was really trying to push sort of my limit with pixel art. And we were working on it in our free time, and it didn't really go anywhere. And so after a while, we just kind of put it on the back burner. And then pandemic hit, and suddenly we were stuck at home. Things were a bit, they weren't great. And so I kind of wanted an outlet, another creative outlet to see if we could, create something. And so AdventureX that year, it's a narrative games convention. They canceled their in-person event due to the pandemic, but what they were doing instead was a game jam. So this would be around 2020. And so I messaged my brother and said, hey, do you want to help me make this game jam? And he said, essentially, he said, yeah, okay. And this is kind of how we got started. So this is some of the reference material we used to come up with the concept of the train. It was essentially a diorama. And after a day, we kind of had this running, which inspired a bit of hope and confidence that we could get it done in 2 weeks. And then this ended up being the final game jam. It was about an hour of gameplay made in 2 weeks. It had like a number of puzzles, a whole load of characters, and people really enjoyed it. So we were one of the most played games of the game jam, if not the most played game in the game jam. We had a really good player reception, a lot of reviews, a lot of people saying to us, hey, this was really cool. This kind of really evoked those games that I enjoyed in the past. What are you doing with it? Are you going to do anything more with it, or is that just it? But what really got our attention was we actually got press coverage for a game jam, which I'd never really seen before. So PC Gamer covered us. We had other outlets essentially talking about how great it was, which I was not expecting at all. I just assumed we put it out and no one would play it. And so we really got thinking, okay, well, maybe there's something here. What can we do? And so we started making a pitch of what a full version of this might look like, a sort of a paid commercial version. And so the initial pitch was to maybe add an extra hour of gameplay, upgrade the visuals slightly, see if we can get full voice acting, gamepad support, high-res font options, support for dyslexia or dyslexic-friendly font, and basically just give it a mild hint of polish. what actually ended up happening was we talked to a few publishers about it, and they were like, okay, well, 2 or 3 hours, why is it 2 or 3 hours? Why isn't this like a feature-length game? Come back and repitch it as a full feature-length product. And then I had to go back for a week and really think about how we're going to do that, because the game jam kind of wraps itself up in an hour. And so this is what I repitched to them. I instead of one character in the game jam you play as Arthur Ackerman, we introduced Herman Merman as a playable character and Diana Osterhagen. So you would play through 3 people's versions of events during the game. And so some characters we theorized might have access to areas that other characters didn't have access to. And sort of as you're exploring the train in different periods of time, maybe you would be able to see places that the other character hadn't seen. It was really about how do we refresh a contained location. Also, the other thing we ended up doing was having it be having it start after everything had happened. So you'd almost have this: oh, is this narrator unreliable? Are they telling the truth? I think it really added to the mystery element. So we talked with Chucklefish, and they really enjoyed the pitch, and they agreed to fund the game and publish it. So that was amazing. And then came the really difficult job of actually making it. So we sat down with my brother and talked a little bit about what do we want this to be. We wrote down a few game pillars and values. And one of them was, we want this to be a comedy of errors. So the whimsy of being pulled away along by an evolving series of highly exaggerated and extravagant situations. And we also wanted it to be an interconnected story because there's 3 characters. So it would be the excitement of seeing a long-seeded plot point pay off later in the story or from another perspective. And we do that in the game. So Act 2 actually takes place before everything you've played for the first few hours in Act 1. And so you see a lot of things in Act 1 that were set up by the second character. And so we do have like moments that are paid off in that way. In terms of values, we wanted to respect the player and their time, but we wanted it to be modern in terms of how you actually play it, but to feel nostalgic. So we have stuff like full controller support. On controller, it's direct movement. You don't have to point and click with an emulated cursor. The last point was like, looks good, plays perfect. So we wanted it to feel good no matter what device you were using. Then there's the realities. So as a tiny team, we had to take on a lot of roles. Between me and Joseph, we did the writing, the design, a lot of the business back end. We did a whole bunch of scheduling and production stuff, which I'll go into, and basically learning how to make the game as we were making it. As we were working, we found out that what worked on paper would not always necessarily work in practice. The writing process was interesting because I wouldn't consider either of us writers. We don't have a writing background. So how we did this is probably not the most optimum way of doing it, but I'm just going to talk about how we did it. So we would get Google Docs, and we'd have a live document. And so we would write the game and the dialogue in Google Docs, and we would sort of iterate, and we would discuss, we would talk about, we would ad-lib, and we would ad-lib, and we would talk about the jokes, and if either of us could laugh, then that kind of won the day. If either of us laughed, we would find a way to include it in the game. This is kind of an example of that. So we would write the dialogue in Google Docs, and then it would get put into Unity. In terms of puzzle design, how we did it was We use puzzle dependency charts. So the tool we use for that was YED. That's a free-to-use tool. A thing we had to think about was that puzzles had to be in service of the story and vice versa, because in this kind of game, they're all interconnected. So the story has to make sense with the puzzles, but the puzzles have to make sense in terms of what you're doing in that moment. And so I took this from Ron Gilbert's blog. He's the creator of Monkey Island and other titles. And so this is kind of how they would work. You would start at the end of the process, the end of the puzzle. So in this example, you need to unlock a basement door. And then you would build on that. Like, okay, how do I unlock the basement door? Maybe you have to find a key in a different part of the game. And then you would build on it again, add more complexity. Maybe you can't open the door before you oil the hinges, say. And this is a very obvious, like, rough example. But what you would eventually end up with is a pretty huge puzzle chart. So this is a small section of our puzzle dependency chart for the first section of the game. I couldn't fit the entire one on because it's massive. But you can kind of see them branch off and connect. And that's, in that example, like you would need several items to progress. So the game has a lot of fluid, hand-drawn animation. It has hundreds of thousands of frames of animation. And that's kind of where I saw us being able to stand out. So we really doubled down on the animation and making the game look as presentable as possible. And all of that was achieved through a tool called Sprite. And that's another tool you can get for a small amount of money. You can get it on Steam directly even. And so it's all keyframed animation. As you can see at the bottom here, it has keyframes, and then you can add tags. And what was great about using this with PowerQuest is that PowerQuest and Unity can kind of read it directly. So you would just give it the Sprite file, and it would convert it into sprite sheets for you. Another thing I want to talk about is kind of how we marketed the game on our socials. Obviously, we had Chucklefish helping with marketing, and we had other partners. But these are the things that we did to push the game on things like Twitter. The first thing was to sell yourself, don't be shy, reuse and recycle, make it personal, posting frequently, and trying to get into things like free showcases on Steam. That really helped us. And making sure that every time we did a post, we would have a call to action. So the most important one for us was generally to get people to wishlist the game. So we would send a tweet out, and we would put in the tweet, make sure you wishlist today, and then we give them a link to the Steam store page. And we would give them the hook. So in my experience, what I found worked best was to keep it as casual as possible, use the explain the game in a line or less. If you can do that, that helps. In terms of reusing and recycling, I found this GIF to work better than anything else we had. So I pretty much posted that continuously over the last year or two. And each time I posted it, it would reach a new audience that had never seen it before. So I think there is a moment of thinking, oh, okay, I'm talking about myself too much, I'm posting this too much, people are bored of seeing it. But that just didn't seem to be the case. We would post it, and it would reach thousands of people, and those would actually generate into wish lists. So I did post it quite a lot. Each one of these ranges from 13,000 likes to 4,000 likes, 1,000 likes. So I would definitely recommend doing this because it's quick and it's easy. So in terms of actually developing the game, this is a post-mortem. We're 2 weeks out, so it's still a bit fresh in our mind. But I think what worked really well for us was we managed to accumulate over 100,000 wish lists. That was over a period of a year or 2 years. So it wasn't like we got 100,000 in the weekend, but we were able to be very successful at gaining wish lists through things like the tweets I talked about, being parts of those free Steam events, things like utilizing Chucklefish's publisher sale. That all really helped us. And we did have some great support from platforms as well. We actually ended up partnering with Good Old Games, or GOG, and they featured it on the front page of their store for the first week of release. We also had some backing from Nintendo, who featured us in their newsletter on Nintendo Switch. We launched with some really good reviews. In the first week, we had an 86 Metacritic rating. So I think we were in one of the top highest releases of that week. And we had really good Steam visibility. We actually launched pretty close to the autumn sale, so I think a lot of games were avoiding it and not launching, but it actually worked quite well for us because we were able to stay on the front page for longer because we weren't bumped off by new releases. So I think we were on the front page for 2 weeks, firstly in the popular upcoming section, but then we were in the new and trending section for almost 2 weeks, and that did translate into sales. Not long after launch, we actually managed to get a very positive rating on Steam. I think you get that after a certain number of wish lists. It's either 50 or 100, I'm not too sure. And then the next milestone is to get 500, which then gets you into overwhelmingly positive, if that's 95% or higher. So we're on track to do that. I think we have almost 300 at this point. And yeah, we had strong sales. We anticipated 10% conversion based on the 100,000 wish lists. And in the first week, we did actually end up reaching that goal across platforms. And we had an amazing team. I mean, I've talked about how it was me and Joseph, because we're the core team, but we had an amazing team of freelancers. Paul Zimmerman did our soundtrack. We had some amazing help on the art front. Ibiki helped us with our sound design. You might have heard his music and sounds in Arco, which came out not that long ago. And then I kind of want to talk about what could have gone better, because I think this is always the most interesting part of a postmortem. Like, what did we do wrong? Looking back, what do we think we would do differently? The game took way longer than anticipated. We had the opportunity to announce it in an indie world in December 2021. And in that indie world, we announced it as coming out in summer 2022. Obviously, that didn't happen. And so what ended up actually being a problem is that because we took much longer to develop the game, we needed some finishing funds. And so we had to spend quite a long time trying to get the last bit of cash. Luckily, Good Old Games, or GOG, was there to partner with us, and they helped us get across the finish line. Another thing is we launched with a few bugs. Reviewers picked them out in the review, or they highlighted them. Luckily, we were able to fix quite a lot of them before it actually released. We have a patch coming out today, I think. So that's something we would look at next, maybe spending a bit more time making sure there's no unexpected issues in the game. And then the other thing I think we did was there was too much game. Like, we were aiming for it to be 7 hours maybe, but it actually ended up being closer to 10 or even 15 hours long, which is quite a lot of game for what we were, for what resources we had and what we were doing. I mean, it's kind of crazy. When we were working on the game, it was almost in a bit of a bubble, and obviously as a developer, you know all the puzzle solutions. You can kind of get through it in a reasonable amount of time. But yeah, when we watched players playing through it and realized how long they were spending on just the first part of the game, we realized, okay, we might have gone a bit too big here. Not necessarily a bad problem, because people generally seem to like longer games. They see length of game as having more value, but in terms of development, I think we probably could have cut it down and made the pacing a little smoother. I guess the other thing, this is more of a personal thing, work-life balance for me was not perfect. I kind of got consumed with developing the game. If I was to do it again, I would definitely spend more time creating boundaries between work and outside of work. I think a big part of that is working from home. It's quite hard when you're working in your kitchen to finish the day and then you're still in your kitchen. So I think going forward with the next game, maybe we would find a different space to work from. And then I guess one last thing, more of a question than a conclusion, but point and click is considered a niche genre. I think going in and talking to platform partners, I think they had the same preconceived notion. I think a lot of platforms at the moment are focused on things like retention and replayability. Like they want games that are hundreds of hours long. And so you come to them with a point-and-click adventure with a linear narrative, and they're like, well, no one's going to play this for 100 hours. And so it made negotiating things like deals with them quite difficult. In conclusion, though, I think the game is a great success. I'm very proud of what we were able to achieve as our debut game. Even though we had things like the backing of GOG and Chucklefish, we're still a super small team, and we managed to make a pretty huge game in terms of the content. Press and players enjoyed the game, and they let us know. We got some really good reviews. We learned a lot of new skills. I learned things like writing. I learned how to produce a game in terms of like the things you need. And I think we're on track to recoup in early 2025. We have a 77 Metacritic score as of this presentation. There's still a few more reviews to come out. We have a very positive rating on Steam, and we've sold approximately 17,000 copies across all platforms in just over 2 weeks. Thank you very much for being here, and I will take any questions if you have any.